Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, a podcast about gardening, botanical history, and literature. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and today is October 6th. Today in botanical history, we celebrate a Kentucky botanist, a French priest and plant explorer, and a Texas doctor and botanist. We'll hear an excerpt from Susan Hill's book, The Magic Apple Tree, and we grow that garden library today with another great book by Michael Durr. And then we'll wrap things up with a reminder from a modern gardener to stop and enjoy the leaves. Great advice. Well, if you didn't know, today is Garlic Lovers Day. So I want to wish you a happy garlic day if you like garlic. Garlic, or stinking rose, is a member of the lily family. And you'll also find onions and leeks and shallots in that family. Garlic is a favorite foraged seasonal ingredient of top chefs. And it's not just a foundational ingredient for cooking. Garlic is also used for medicinal purposes. It has antibiotic properties, it helps reduce blood pressure and cholesterol, and herbalists recommend garlic as a remedy for colds. And if you feel like making a garlic road trip, Gilroy, California is known as the garlic capital of the world. And I thought I'd share two of my favorite quotes about garlic with you in honor of the day. This first one is from the American artist, author, and restaurateur Alice May Brock. She wrote, "Tomatoes and oregano make it Italian. Wine and tarragon make it French. Sour cream makes it Russian. Lemon and cinnamon make it Greek. Soy sauce makes it Chinese. Garlic makes it good." And then finally, here's a quote from the late, great Anthony Bourdain from his book, Kitchen Confidential: Adventures in the Culinary Underbelly. He wrote, "Garlic is divine. Few food items can taste so many distinct ways handled correctly. Misuse of garlic is a crime. Please treat your garlic with respect. Avoid at all costs that vile spew you see rotting in oil in screw-top jars. Too lazy to peel fresh? You don't deserve to eat garlic." And then finally, don't forget the piece of advice that Brie Arthur shared with me many years ago when I interviewed her for, I think it was her book called Foodscape Revolution. She shared with me her little tip for maximizing garden space and still planting garlic. And what she does is she plants garlic along the borders of her garden. It saves space. It makes it easy to get to, and I thought it was a great best practice for gardeners. All right, it's time for today's curated news. All right, today's curated news comes to us from Country Living magazine. This is an article that was written by Matt Reese Warren, and the title is Garden Border Ideas: Design, Style, Planting, and Maintenance. So what Matt is writing about here is a back to the basics guide that will give you the best garden borders for your space and soil type. And as Matt points out, fall is the very best time to get out there and either plant a new garden border or redesign and reinvigorate an old one. Now is a great time to divide plants, to transplant or move plants. It's a great time to edit your borders, to deal with things like crowding or plants that are out of place. And then this is where Matt talks about a few tips and tricks of the trade. So I'm going to run through a few of these here with you really quick, and then you can read this article for yourself in the Facebook group for the show. And before I review some of these with you, I just want to share my own personal tip with you for editing your garden borders, and that is that they do need editing. And this entire concept came to me when I was talking to my neighbor. I have a brand new neighbor across the street, and they were installing a new garden. And this young gardener made the comment that she was so glad that she was having this garden installed, and she hoped that they got it right because she didn't want to ever have to deal with it. And it could have been the most beautifully designed garden, which it's not, but that's a whole nother story. And she would still have to address this garden border from time to time. So I'm challenging you to ask yourself, have you done your due diligence when it comes to addressing your garden borders? If you haven't looked at some of your garden borders in the last couple of years, or you've let a few get away from you, right now is the perfect time to take some action. Okay, now here are some of the tips that Matt talks about. First, he talks about getting border inspiration. If you feel that your garden is looking a little meh, then it's great to go back through some garden books or to jump online, get on sites like Pinterest or Home and Garden, wherever you find inspiration, and see if there isn't something that really captures your attention. Another tip that Matt talks about is picking a style and sticking to it. This will give your garden cohesion and pack a more powerful visual punch. Matt also talks about choosing plants. And, this can be something that you might want to consider if you have an area that is just tired or not life-giving to you anymore. Then maybe it needs a little bit of a shot in the arm with a few new plants. There's nothing wrong with digging a few of your plants up, passing them along to a neighbor, or even composting them so that you can make room for something new and invigorating for you and your garden. Recently in the Facebook group, I think it was in the last couple of days, Patricia Chandler Newport has shared pictures of her brand new garden space in her own home garden. And I think this is the front garden that she's showing us. And I tell you what, she did a great job of plant selection. And sometimes just seeing what someone is doing in a brand new garden, their plant selections, how they're positioning those plants, the shape of their garden, where they're putting the garden borders. You can use all of that information, especially if you're doing a garden redesign. Now, the last couple of things that Matt talks about are growth and habit. Those are things to consider. Thinking about wildlife, because of course we don't garden in a vacuum. We're gardening in partnership with Mother Nature, and wildlife is part of that. And then finally, maintenance, which is a concern that every gardener has, even if you're a brand new gardener like my new neighbor across the street. And as Matt reminds us, borders are dynamic. They change over time. And so if you're editing your borders as you go, if you use this precious time in the fall to pay attention to your borders, to make some changes, you'll never go too far wrong. All right, if you'd like to check out this article by Matt Reese Warren over at Country Living, all you need to do is search for the word border in the Facebook group for the show, and this post will pop right up, and you can read about all of Matt's tips in detail. This is a great little post, and hopefully will inspire you to get out and pay some special attention to your borders this fall. Now, if you're not in the Facebook group for the show, don't worry about it. You can join at any time. You have a standing invitation. All you need to do is head on up to the search bar in Facebook where you'd search for an old friend and type in the words Daily Gardener Community. And then you'll get 3 little questions from me asking about the podcast. And then if you answer those, I'll admit you into the group. And I can't wait to hopefully get to know you a little bit and maybe see some pictures of your garden. All right, it's time for today's botanical history. Here's botanical history for today, October 6th. Today is the birthday of Charles Wilkins Short, an American botanist and doctor. He was born on this day, October 6th, in 1794. A Kentuckian, Charles wrote A Flora of Kentucky in 1833, and he had one of the largest, most valuable private herbariums with over 15,000 plant samples, and his massive personal garden covered several acres. Charles was honored in the naming of many plants, including the plant known as the Oconee bell, named the Shortia galasifolia. Now, in terms of botanical history, this plant has quite a story. You see, back in the 1800s, when Charles was still alive, the location of the plant had become a mystery. People couldn't find it. And in 1863, when Charles Short died, botanists still did not know where to find this plant or even if it still existed. In fact, many botanists were asked the question, have you found the Shortia yet? It was driving them crazy. But finally, in May of 1877, a North Carolina teenager named George Hyams sent an unknown specimen to Asa Gray at Harvard. And when he laid eyes on this plant, he knew immediately that it was the Shortia, and he could be heard crying, "Eureka," when he saw it. 2 years later, Asa, along with his wife and his dear friend, the botanist John Redfield, and the director of the Arnold Arboretum, Charles Sprague Sargent, and the botanist William Canby, all stood around together this tiny little patch of earth where the Shortia was growing in complete oblivion to all the hubbub it had caused. And the long search to find the Shortia was over. It was growing right where George Hyams said it would be. And today is the birthday of André Soulié. He was a French Roman Catholic missionary, herbalist, healer, and botanist. And he was born on this day, October 6th, in 1858. Many of the first plant collectors were missionaries, and André was one of a handful of the last missionary collectors. He collected thousands of dried plants and seeds and then sent them back home to Paris. André was so fluent in the different Chinese dialects that he could actually pass as a local. Now, in the 1800s and early 1900s, plant collecting in China was dangerous business. Collectors not only contended with geographic challenges like the terrain, but also with political upheaval, the Opium Wars, and the ongoing dispute with Tibet increased distrust and hostility toward foreigners. In 1905, in retaliation for an invasion of Tibet by a British explorer named Francis Younghusband, André was abducted by Tibetan monks. He was grabbed right in the middle of packing up his plant specimens. Then he was tortured for over 2 weeks before finally being shot dead by his captors. André Soulié is remembered for his discovery of the Rosa Souliana and the butterfly bush. He also has a rhododendron, a lily, and a primula named in his honor. And it was on this day in 1877 that a 46-year-old American doctor and botanist named Levi Jasper James Russell was whipped. He was lured out of his home at midnight to treat a sick woman, and instead he met with a mob who stripped him naked and gave him 100 lashes for being an infidel. A leading member of the Freethinkers, Levi was agnostic. He was also a pioneering doctor and herbalist. Levi served as chairman of the Committee on Medical Botany for the Texas State Medical Association. But before his life in Texas, he had gone west to California to dig for gold with his brothers, leaving their home state of Georgia. The three brothers were among the very first people to prospect for gold in Colorado, and they helped found the city of Denver. And in all his travels, Levi survived being shot with a bow and arrow by Native Americans in Montana and contracting smallpox during his imprisonment by Union soldiers during the Civil War. But all that was behind him by the time he was whipped on this day, October 6th in 1877. But he stayed on and he continued to serve his community as a doctor. He eventually died in Bell County, Texas in 1908 at the age of 77. It's time for today's Unearthed Words. Today's Unearthed Words come to us from Susan Hill, the author of The Magic Apple Tree, A Country Year. In early October, the woods begin to come alive again, and that surprises many people who think of them in autumn as places of decay and dying, falling leaves, and animals hiding away for their long winter hibernation. But it is the summer there that is the dead time. In summer, the air hangs heavy and close and still. Nothing flowers, nothing sings, nothing stirs, and no light penetrates. But now there is a stirring, a sense of excitement. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, The Tree Book by Michael Durr and Keith Warren. This book came out in 2019, and the subtitle is Superior Selections for Landscapes, Streetscapes, and Gardens. This book is co-authored by Michael Durr and tree breeder and nurseryman Keith Warren. Together, this dynamic duo of tree experts put together the latest and greatest must-have tree book. The two men feature old favorites and exciting new selections. And my favorite is when they recommend the hidden gems, the overlooked trees, and the underappreciated trees that deserve a second look. I've been saying for the past 2 years that gardeners need to plant more trees, but gardeners often lack tree expertise. They're much more versed in cultivating edibles or ornamentals. And this is where the Tree Book, today's recommendation, can save the day. If you've wondered about the trees that you should be considering, what tree is right for your space, why a tree is not working out, or how to put together a stunning tree portfolio for your property, this book is essential. This book is 900 pages of nerding out on trees with two masters who share information gleaned from training and experience. The best way to get your info. You can get a copy of The Tree Book by Michael Durr and Keith Warren and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $32. And I did the math, that's about 3 cents a page. Great deal. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day 4 years ago, October 6th in 2017, that Chris Howell, the gardener at Birmingham Botanical Gardens, tweeted a beautiful fall photo of leaves. In a day and age where manicured lawns are still universally valued, leaves are often seen more as a nuisance to our busy lives, being quickly raked up, bagged up, or blown away. But Chris, on this day 4 years ago, was struck by the simple beauty of fallen leaves on a path. And so he tweeted the photo along with this caption: "Some leaves just need to be left on the ground to admire for a while." So take some of Chris's advice and let them sit out there this week. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove and Wyoming, Minnesota. If you want to read today's show notes, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. And don't forget that you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can always get in touch by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.